So, Farron, obviously a busy week in the news. Let's start with the news from the primary races. Not very good from a progressive's perspective this week, particularly in your home state of Florida.
We tend to screw up elections a lot down here. It's really no surprise. I mean, when you follow the polls, what they've been saying, but it's still disappointing when it happens. We have Marco Rubio wins it on the Republican nomination for Senate. Alan Grayson loses. Tim Canova, horrible loss to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And to be honest, I think a lot of the country obviously was paying attention to the Wasserman Schultz race, and that one's the one that really stings the most. I mean, when you look at Wasserman Schultz's record, the siding with the payday lenders that are preying on the poor in this country, and then on top of the fact that she had to resign in disgrace from her chair position at the DNC, but the voters in South Florida said, you know what, we're okay with all of that. We're okay with you being a Republican light. We're fine with that. We're gonna put you back in. That's to me what is so disappointing about that is that the behavior we've seen from Wasserman Schultz, and the voters just don't seem to care about that. I don't know how you overcome that. It's almost looking at what happened to the Democratic Party over the last 8 years. There's been this very clear evolution from this hope and change of Obama to it's okay to take corporate money. It's okay to side with corporations every now and then. It is gradually becoming the Republican Party. And when you look at who Alan Grayson lost to, Patrick Murphy, I mean, this is a guy who several years ago was a Republican, got a ton of daddy's money to run for office as a Democrat, supports the Keystone XL pipeline, has voted to gut provisions of Obamacare along with the Republicans, was one of the only Democrats in the House who supported the Benghazi witch hunt. And this is the guy who's now running against Marco Rubio for the U.S. Senate seat from Florida. And polls are already showing Rubio's going to kill it here. And that's very disappointing.
Yeah, and I'd add too, he had maxed out in 2012 to Mitt Romney. So it's pretty stunning. I mean, let's take these separately because I think there's two different lessons to be learned here. I mean, like it or not, the fact is that Representative Grayson, who from in terms of a progressive voice and in terms of a lawmaker who I think was a champion of progressive values, there was a lot of just, I think, oddness, frankly, between the reports and accusations from his ex-wife. I don't know what the truth is there, but what was clear is that in the course of his campaign, his now new wife ran for his existing congressional seat against his former chief of staff, splitting the progressive vote, getting this guy Soto in, who's also another corporate Democrat. And that was very short-sighted, and frankly, so very problematic. I think there was a different dynamic going on there. With that said, I think it's clear that folks like Chuck Schumer in the Senate and even John Tester, who working with the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, they did not want Alan Grayson in the Senate. I mean, Chuck Schumer does not want any more senators to enter the Senate being to the left of him. He wants as many people as he can now in the Democratic caucus to the right of him because it gives him some oxygen, it gives him some space, it gives him some reason and an argument as to why he doesn't do certain progressive things. I mean, let's face it, that's what, and John Tester, the same deal. And so there's, I think, probably some real concern by the Chuck Schumers out there, and particularly a guy who's probably and almost sure to be the Democratic leader in the Senate. Whether that's the majority leader or not, we don't know. Whether he's the president of the Senate, that's going to be a function of these races. But they have done a horrible job when it comes to getting candidates. I mean, like you say, Murphy is you could call him a Republican light, but that's just simply because he decided he had a better shot to run in the Democratic primary. Right. I don't see how he beats Rubio. This is obviously a bit of a disaster for the Democrats. You've got the same problem in places like Pennsylvania. You've got the same problem, frankly, in Ohio, where the Senate establishment basically have shot themselves in the foot. And, the balance of the Senate hangs in the balance. The ability to confirm a genuine progressive to the Supreme Court hangs in the balance. So aside from the obvious concern about whether or not we're going to have a strengthened progressive caucus in the Senate, there's a legitimate concern that Chuck Schumer and John Tester have blown an unbelievable opportunity to take back the Senate. We won't know this until November, but the idea that Toomey and Portman, I should say, in Ohio are in the lead at this point when you've got someone like Donald Trump on the top of the ticket is just and Rubio, for that matter, is just incredible malpractice. And, malpractice implies that it's incompetence. I mean, this is not incompetence. I mean, this is them deciding we would rather go with a corporate Dem than go with someone who is not going to go along with their leadership, but give the Democrats a majority in the Senate. Now, on the other hand, when you talk about the Tim Canova race against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, we have a situation here where a virtual unknown challenged someone who was a lock and a very powerful Democrat at one point, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and got 43% of the vote. I think there's a lot to be encouraged thereby. But, this also has to do with some problems in the sort of post-Bernie world, the post-Bernie Sanders campaign world, where there was a real feeling amongst a lot of people who had been associated with Bernie Sanders' campaign that the Bernie Sanders outfit, Our Revolution, because it was set up as a way to, with a tax status, to allow it to take corporate donations that were anonymous, essentially, or unreported for the most part, that they couldn't coordinate with Tim Canova's campaign. And a lot of the Bernie energy, which allowed him to raise all that money and allowed him to rise to the top, could not be channeled into his electoral success. So there's a lot of disappointment in Florida in some respects for different reasons.